Hi, it's Gary. I'm a volunteer with the Convention States Project here in Indiana. I want to talk a little bit about the national debt. This is a horrible problem. One of the reasons we need a convention of states. I'm going to talk rather than how long it takes to add $1 trillion. I want to talk about how long it has taken to add 50% to the national debt. Now, a 50% increase, that's a pretty big increase. You'd think that might take a long time. That's like going from 2 trillion to 3 trillion, which we did between 1985 or 1986, actually in 1990. Took about 50 months, that case, and that was fairly rapid. And that's been pretty close to the average overall in the last 20 years. And I'm going to go back to the period between 2003 and 2008 for the first 50% increase we're going to look at. That was an increase from roughly $6.5 trillion to $10 trillion. And that took 5.5 years for that 50% increase. The next 50% increase happened much more quickly. It happened between 2008 and 2011. And you may recall that was during the great financial crisis. Government kind of went crazy spending money, and it took only 3 years for a 50% increase from 10 trillion to 15 trillion. The next increase of 50% was really a slowdown in terms of pace of the increase. It took about 8 years. That was the tail end of the Obama administration and most of the Trump administration. And one of the things about this that if you really look back through history, the spending has gone on almost irrespective of which party was in control. And so that's why elections can't fix this, because it doesn't matter which party's in control. But in the 8 years between 2011 and 2019, the national debt increased from about 15 trillion to about 23 trillion dollars. So that was the end of 2019. The increase in 50%, the next one took just 4 years between the beginning of 2020 and the beginning of 2024. That 50% increase took the national debt from 23 trillion to 34 trillion, about where it stands today. And so it's rapidly grown. And right now, the projections are that if you go out and look on the web, it'll tell you, hey, the national debt's likely to reach $50 trillion in just 8 years. My friends, don't you believe it? I project that the national debt will grow by another 50% to about $51 trillion in just 4 years. Part of that is because of higher interest rates. Higher interest rates bake into the cake, higher spending. We got $1 trillion a year now it costs just to pay the interest on the debt, and the interest rates are rising. So that's not going to get any better. We have a new speaker. Not much has changed. Speaker Johnson agreed to a continuing resolution, which really just continues spending at the prior level, which is largely a level that was negotiated between Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. So, come March, we're going to find out whether we're going to shut the government down or whether we're going to get real spending reforms with the passage of 13 spending bills, one for each department of government, whereby government spending can be lowered somewhat, at least in some departments. It's a big mess. It's a huge problem for the United States. The growing debt is passing on our problem to the next generation. It's not fair. It's not moral. It's something that something has to be done, which is one reason why we need a convention of the states to put limits on federal spending. We'll see what happens.